More than 11,000 horror games have been released on Steam since 2014. The number of titles in the genre continues to grow. In such a competitive market, it's essential to have a unique twist that captures players' attention and leaves a lasting impression. And very few developers have managed to do this successfully, including developer with the name Rail and his Fears to Fathom game series. These games may seem to use classic horror scenarios, but the real uniqueness lies in the storytelling. Each episode is told from the perspective of someone who allegedly survived the events, with the developer implying that these are real experiences submitted by people through email, shown in the main menu. This framing plants unease in players' mind, even before the game begins. A lot of horror games focus on paranormal activity, which is, scary in the moment, but it is easy to forget once the game is over, because that world doesn't exist outside the screen. Fears to Fathom is different. There is no paranormal content at all, just real-life scenarios that could happen to anyone and allegedly have. This makes it much harder to shake off the fear, even after closing the game. The realism of the series has helped it to gain huge popularity among YouTubers, streamers and fans. Some players doubt that the stories really happened, believing that they may have been written by the developer himself or submitted as pure fiction. But for many, the immersive experience makes the truth less important. Still, what if we take the idea seriously? What if each episode mirrors real-life crime cases that are eerily similar? Let's explore how each Fears to Fathom episode aligns with the unsettling true events. First episode of Fears to Fathom Home Alone focuses on 14-year-old boy named Miles, facing a home intruder while his parents are away. As players navigate the episode, they experience several chilling moments, where intruder could be lurking outside or even inside the house, creating a tense and suspenseful atmosphere. In 2016, a chilling real-life home invasion in Castro Valley, California unfolded almost exactly like the events of Fears to Fathom Home Alone. 14-year-old Natalia was home alone for the first time, when a man began persistently knocking on her doors. Like the protagonist of episode 1, she was home alone when the knocks escalated into the break-in. The intruder, later identified as Clinton DeForest, forced entry through the bathroom window, the same entry method that the villain in the game used. Most remarkably, she locked herself in the bedroom, just like Miles did, and waited for the police. Officers arrived in under 3 minutes and successfully apprehended the suspect. There's an even more intense real-world case that took place in Phoenix, Arizona, one that escalated far beyond simply hiding and waiting. While it wasn't the same exact copy of Fears to Fathom episode, the initial fear was still the same. In 2012, a 14-year-old boy was home alone with his 3 younger siblings when danger appeared at their front door. Some woman rang the bell, and following his parents' instructions, the teen didn't answer because he simply didn't recognize the woman. Moments later, loud bang shook the door, and he realized that someone was breaking in. Acting quickly, he rushed his siblings upstairs and retrieved his father's handgun. As he reached the top of the stairs, a 37-year-old man broke through the front door with the gun in hand, and it was aimed directly at the boy. In a split-second decision that likely saved his siblings, the teen fired, critically wounding the intruder. Police later confirmed that the suspect never got a shot off, survived his injuries, and later was charged with aggravated assault and burglary. His choice to protect his siblings under extreme pressure mirrors the survival instinct at the heart of the first episode of Fears to Fathom. Main character's Holly's nightmare in Fears to Fathom Norwood Hitchhike begins as a simple late-night drive. Returning from a gaming convention, she takes a quiet forest back road to avoid heavy traffic, only for her night to spiral into terror. Her car mysteriously stalls, she is forced to rely on helpful stranger who ended up leaving her in a shady roadside motel. She survived some strangers sneaking all around her, taking pictures of her, and even the drugged coffee machine, which knocked her unconscious before mysteriously disappearing. I didn't find the exact real-world story where criminals stage such a deliberate narrative, sabotaging the car, coordinating multiple actors and drugging a victim through a coffee machine, but initial fear and predatory tactics have happened in real life. One of the most chilling examples is the 1968 kidnapping of 20-year-old Barbara Jane Muckle, a college student and heiress. While staying at a motel with her mother, Barbara answered a 4 a.m. knock from people claiming to be law enforcement, who said that her boyfriend had been in an accident. In reality, it was escaped convict Gary Stephen Christ and his helper Ruth Eisman-Shire. They burst into the room, chloroformed Barbara, bound her mother and dragged her into the night. Barbara was driven to a remote pine stand in Gwinnett County, Georgia, where kidnappers placed her inside a fiberglass box and buried her under the soil. Trapped in the darkness, she spent 83 narrowing hours underground, clinging to the thoughts of Christmas morning with her family to survive. Her father paid the $500,000 ransom, after which Chris telephoned law enforcement with vague directions to the burial site. FBI agents and local police frantically dug through the dirt, finally opening the box and pulling Barbara out alive. Her situation mirrors Holly's in every psychological way: predators posing as helpers, isolation in a controlled environment, chemical incapacitation, and the helpless wait for salvation. As you can see, traveling can be dangerous even when you're not alone. Barbara was with her mother and this horror still happened to her. But what about bigger groups? In 2012, a man and 3 friends in San Ignacio, Belize, experienced what he later called a friendly kidnapping. After all the bars around the city closed, a seemingly helpful local woman offered to take them to a spot that was still open. She drove them into the dark outskirts of a town, down winding roads, laughing erratically. Soon we realized she wasn't taking us to food or back to the hotel, the man recalled. The car stopped at the remote concrete building, guarded by a large, intimidating man. Inside, loud music blasted as the woman and her friend forced the tourists to dance, groping and cornering them while the guards watched. Time seemed to move horrendously slow, the man said as the hours crawled by and the group realized that they were trapped and isolated with no control over their fate. Their escape was a desperate dash into the night, sprinting through the darkness, hiding in roadside bushes, and finally flagging down a passing farmer in a pickup truck who gave them a ride back to town. If a group of adults can be manipulated and trapped this easily, imagine the vulnerability of traveling completely alone. In 2025, the government of Canada issued a warning to citizens visiting Colombia about criminals using scopolamine and other substances to target solo travelers. The official travel advisory warns criminals often target those traveling alone and may put drugs into food and drinks. Once the victim is incapacitated, they are vulnerable to robbery, assault, or kidnapping. Holly's drugged coffee machine is a chilling metaphor to this real-world danger. A moment of full security, followed by a sudden, disorienting plunge into helplessness. Holly's story may be, of course, dramatized for the gameplay, but dangers are still terrifyingly real. Predators thrive in isolation. They can manipulate environments to their advantage and often wear the mask of helpfulness. In the real world, unlike in a game, there is no pause menu, only the hope that awareness and quick decisions can keep you from becoming the next story whispered as a warning to travelers. In Fears to Fathom, Carson house, the horror doesn't come from strangers in the dark or roadside traps. It comes from someone Noah once trusted. What begins as a simple house-sitting job for an 18-year-old Noah Baker quickly spirals into the tense personal confrontation with his ex-girlfriend Kara, whose descent into methamphetamine addiction and emotional instability turned a peaceful suburban night into a targeted, life-threatening attack. After a quiet start involving dog-sitting, grocery runs, and late-night texts with his friends and his current girlfriend Evelyn, Noah's evening is interrupted by unexplained noises, power outages, and mysterious messages. The tension reaches its peak when he checks security monitors and sees Kara standing in the hallway holding a kitchen knife. She is there for one reason only: Noah. Her presence, her threats, and her manipulation, not random violence but deliberate, intimate revenge rooted in rejection and addiction. This scenario is disturbingly close to real-world patterns of domestic abuse and obsessive relation. One real case from 2022 in Shelby, North Yorkshire, showed just how dangerous a rejected partner can become. Rafal Rayakovsky, 26-year-old man, was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison after he stabbed his ex-girlfriend 3 times with a kitchen knife, following a prolonged campaign of stalking and coercion. He had secretly installed software on her computer to monitor her social media after their breakup, and later stormed her home, strangled her, and threatened her life, demanding that she leave country with him. She agreed out of fear, and once outside, she fled to a group of bystanders for help. Rayakovsky then stabbed her in the back, shoulder, and arm, and was only stopped by the interventions of others nearby. In both stories, attackers came armed with a kitchen knife and struck in spaces that were supposed to be safe, one in a familiar home, the other in temporary but trusted environment. Both attacks were also highly personal. Rayakovsky didn't attempt to rob, and neither did Kara. Statistically, women make up the majority of domestic violence victims, 75% according to the Office of National Statistics. The gender dynamics reflected in Carson house flip the usual roles for narrative impact, but the emotional profile is painfully accurate. Rejected partners with substance abuse issues often spiral into threats, stalking, and violence when they feel abandoned or humiliated. Kara's choice to steal nothing except the kitchen knife she intended to use as a murder weapon is perhaps the most chilling detail in the game. This was personal. She wanted Noah to suffer. Episode 3, Carson House, may be fiction, but it taps into very real psychology, obsession, escalation, and dangerous combination of rejection, resentment, and drugs. In the game, the horror ends when Noah runs. In real life, the trauma doesn't stop at the door. The core themes of episode 4, which are cultist activity hidden deep in the wilderness and the unexplained disappearances of innocents, especially children, blur the lines between fiction and reality. The episode centers around Jack Nelson, a 24-year-old man hired to work as a seasonal fire lookout in Ironbark State Park. From the moment Jack arrives, the atmosphere is heavy. At a local diner, town folks warn him about strange disappearances in the forest, and upon reaching the park, Jack sees posters of missing children tacked onto bulletin boards, an eerie sign of what's to come. During his stay in Tower 11, Jack experiences increasingly disturbing events, strange figures in the woods, strange symbols, and cult-like activity, including candles and skulls arranged in the ritualistic display. As the days pass, a flare, a screaming hiker, and finally a group of roped individuals encircling a burning altar sends Jack into a state of panic. When he takes a photo, the cult notices the flash and chase him, leading to a terrifying escape. Despite having photographic evidence and his own eyewitness account, authorities refuse to believe Jack. The episode draws heavily from real-world fears: being alone, not being believed, and stumbling upon something you were never meant to see. It's impossible to ignore similarities of children disappearances in episode 4 to the 1979 case of Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy who vanished while camping with family in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis had been playing a harmless prank, ducking behind a bush to jump and scare his dad, together with other kids. But when the other boys emerged, Dennis didn't. He was never seen again. A massive search involving over 1,000 people failed to uncover a single definitive clue. Some reports included a scream and a suspicious man driving a white vehicle, but these were dismissed due to the distance from the scene. Like a cult that Jack witnessed, what happened to Dennis was hidden in the woods and ultimately dismissed by the investigators. The silence of the wilderness of Ironbark Lookout also mirrors the unsolved murder of James Alexander Carey, a park ranger at Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. In 1927, Carey was found shot to death just 50 feet from where he had previously arrested several bootleggers. He had been alone, patrolling remote park trails. Though multiple suspects were identified, including men with known criminal activity, the case was hampered by jurisdictional issues and suspected local corruption. No one was convicted. The woods, again, swallowed the truth. Whether it's the unsettling presence Jack confronts, the screaming in the forest, or disbelief of authorities, Ironbark reflects what happens when isolation meets malevolence. The danger isn't ghosts, it's people. Ironbark ended with Jack surviving, but in real life, many don't.
I'm right here! I hear you! I hear your whistles. What? I see you behind the trees to my right. You're freaking me out.
Woodbury Getaway's center horror storyline is being isolated in a remote rental cabin and stalked by seemingly friendly stranger. The episode begins with Sydney, an overworked consultant, who joins her friend Mike on a cabin trip. After booking an affordable cabin online and picking up food on the way, they arrive at a cozy property. They are greeted by a Rick, a man claiming to manage the cabin. He was initially cordial, but odd behavior was unexpectedly appearing. Handling tools late at night and intruding on their privacy sets a growing unease in motion. Sydney and Mike catch him on sight uninvited and begin to suspect that something's wrong. But then, after Nora, who is another friend that was supposed to arrive later than Sydney and Mike, was delayed even more by a car trouble, Sydney was left alone because Mike went to help Nora, so she's not stranded in the middle of a snowstorm. And after Mike leaves, the situation escalates. A suspicious hiker that we met earlier in the pizza place appears at the door, and then Rick shows up again with the hammer in hand. And moments after, Sydney receives a message from real Rick, who says that he hasn't been to the cabin in weeks. Trapped inside as the imposter barricades exit and stalks her room by room, Sydney must hide and stay quiet, and survive until help arrives. Ultimately, she narrowly escapes when Mike and Nora return just as the fake Rick flees into the night. Sydney's experience with the fake Rick, who has taken over the legitimate rental operation, reflects contemporary concerns about vacation rental security and the vulnerabilities created by remote property arrangements. The imposter's sophisticated operation of staying at the property for weeks, maintaining the charade of maintenance work, and ultimately blocking exits to trap the victim demonstrates how modern criminals exploit the trust-based systems. In unfamiliar environments, predators can exploit property-based deception to manipulate victims' perception of safety, such as claiming that there are no police nearby, even though there were a lot of police cars passing by while we were driving to the property. Predators do this to leave isolated targets like Sydney with limited support and making escape seem impossible. Rick's intentions, which Sydney later suspected involving robbing her and Mike, could have easily escalated into lethal violence, just as in real cases where property crimes turn far more dangerous when victims resist or uncover the deception. One harrowing real-world parallel is the Teed family attack in Oakley, Utah. In 1990, sisters Leanne and Trish Teed were spending holidays at their family's secluded cabin, so remote that access during the winter required a snowmobile. Unbeknownst to them, two men, Von Taylor and Edward Daly, had broken into the cabin days earlier, eaten family's food and unwrapped Christmas gifts. When the family arrived, they were ambushed. The intruders fatally shot their mother and grandmother, seriously injured their father, and forced sisters to drive them down the mountain on snowmobiles. Through sheer bravery, the sisters managed to keep their captors calm until they reached the car. A tense, high-speed pursuit was happening before the police finally captured the attackers. One of the criminals was sentenced to death and another received life in prison. The real horror here came from a violent invasion, cloaked in deceptive calm. The total lack of safety in a place that should have been peaceful. Even more recently, in January 2025, an Airbnb-related scam in Mombasa, Kenya ended in a terrifying robbery. Three criminals posing as hosts lured two Russian tourists into a fake rental before showing off weapons and demanding about $15,000. The criminals used an online dating scam to lure the victims, and once inside the false Airbnb, criminals threatened to kill tourists if they didn't comply. This illustrates how modern tech-savvy criminals weaponize the illusion of hospitality to trap victims, especially foreigners who are unfamiliar with their surroundings. Woodbury Getaway also echoes the broader trend of predators manipulating remote environments. Sydney is vulnerable not just because of the imposter, but because no one else she knows is around. An intentional tactic also used by criminals in Utah and Kenya. It's the physical isolation, the lack of immediate help, and the false comfort of a cozy setting that make the danger even more insidious. The fear of strangers in wilderness isn't just the stuff of horror games. It's an ever-present danger, especially in isolated settings while help is far away. Fears to Fathom, Woodbury Getaway evokes the discomfort that someone could be watching, waiting, pretending to be someone else. And this is pulled straight from the reality. The threat doesn't always knock. Sometimes it already has the key. Across every Fears to Fathom episode, the horror is grounded in real-world crimes. Each story blends multiple true crime elements into its narrative, creating a fear that lingers beyond the game. The psychology of the series, manipulation of trust, destruction of the safe spaces, and the reminder that danger often comes from other people makes it especially haunting. Aren't just fictional plots that could happen. So next time you're traveling, booking a quiet getaway, or simply are home at night, check your logs again, because the scariest stories are the ones that might be waiting outside your own door, and Fears to Fathom series proved it.